Hey y'all, today's video is going to be my March recent reads video. I am filming this a couple days early. And yeah, the first book I read was Spiral, which is the second book. The first book was Collide. I gave this book 5 stars. It was really, really good. It was a marriage of convenience. Then I read Chase Lovett Wants Me, and I gave that book 4 stars. It was a college hockey romance. Then I read Beg, Borrow, or Steal. I gave that book 4 stars, and it was about 2 first grade teachers who compete in this competition and they get a prize, but they slowly start to fall in love with each other. Then I read Unromance, and it was about an author and about an author who falls in love, and it was really, really good. I gave it 5 stars. Then I read the entire Forever Yours trilogy by Cara Bastone. I gave that book 5 stars, the series 5 stars. Then I read the entire Breakaway series, and I gave the series 4 stars. Then I read When You Wish Upon a Lantern, and I gave that book 4 stars. Then I read the entire Late in You series, and I gave that series 5 stars. By L.A. Cotton, I think, if I remember correctly. Then I read the entire Lakeside series by Avery Keelan, I think, if I remember correctly, and I gave that series 5 stars. Then I read Breakaway, which I gave 5 stars, and then I read Otherwise Engaged, which I gave 4 stars. Then I read Wild Side, which is the third book in the Rose Hills series. I gave that book 5 stars. Then I read the entire Ali Finkel series, and I gave the entire series 3 stars. Then I read Maya Plays a Part, and it's about this girl named Maya who is autistic, and she gets a role in a play. Then I read The Color of Sound, and I gave this book 5 stars. It's about this girl who has synesthesia, and yeah. Then I read Listen to Your Heart by Casey West, and it's about this girl who basically joins a podcast like in her school and stuff, and she thought that her friend was gonna get to be part of it, but instead the main character gets to be a part of it, and I gave that book 5 stars. Then I read Bingsu for Two, and it's about these 2 main characters who they both work at a cafe, and I gave that book 5 stars. Then I read The House of My Mother by Sherry Frankie, and I gave that book 5 stars. It was very opening, basically learning about what she went through and stuff. Then I read the first book in the Rosewood series, which is Steal My Heart. I gave that book 4 stars. And I also read Silver Lining, which is the second book in that series, and I also gave it 4 stars. Then I read Gut Reaction, which is about a girl named Tess, and I gave that book 5 stars. And Tess gets diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and she loves to bake, and it also talks about grief because her father sadly passed away from a heart attack, and it was very, very close to home because my dad has heart conditions, and so yeah, it was really, really good but very emotional. Then I read Love is in the Hair, and I gave that book 5 stars, and it was about a group of girls who had like a hair revolution in their school, and one of them has alopecia, and yeah. Then I read Time and Time Again, and I gave that book 3 stars, and it's about this girl who has a chronic illness, and she ends up reliving the same day over and over again. And then I read Lily Xiao Speaks Out, and it's about Lily who helps out her friend to learn Chinese, and it goes from there, and it's a middle grade, and I gave that book 4 stars. Then I read The Unbeatable Lily Hong. I gave that book 4 stars, and it's about this girl who basically hated this other boy from the first start, and they have to like be in a competition and stuff, and it goes from there. Then I read Stand Up Yumi Chung, and it's about this girl who basically has to stand up for herself. And yeah, after that I read Danny Chung Sums It Up, and I gave this book 4 stars. It was interesting. Then I read A Place at the Table by, I don't remember the author's name, but I gave that book 5 stars. And it was about these two girls who both are in a cooking class, and they are both Muslim, I believe, if I remember correctly. Then I read The Perfect Guy Doesn't Exist, and I gave that book 4 stars. Then I read Counting Down with You, and I gave that book 4 stars, actually. No, 3 stars. Then I read Unstuck, and I gave that book 4 stars. And then I read Class Act, and it's about this girl who basically gave advice, and it wasn't really my favorite, but I gave it 3 stars. Then I read Stay With My Heart, and it's about this girl who joins a band, and her mother recently passed away. And yeah, I gave it 4 stars. And then I read I am Not Here to Make Friends, and I gave that book 5 stars. And then I read Artifacts of an Ex, and I gave that book 4 stars. And it's about a girl named Chloe who gets broken up with, and she basically sends everything that she had, and it goes to a different place. And yeah, and then I read Just Happy to Be Here, and I gave that book 3 stars. Then I read Beach Read by Emily Henry, and I gave that book 3 stars. It wasn't my favorite. Then I read Shannon in the Spotlight, and I gave that book 4 stars. And it's about a girl named Shannon who wants to be in the spotlight in like an acting class and stuff. And then I read Arya Khan's Bollywood Moment, and it's about a girl named Arya who wants to have a moment in her sister's wedding, and I gave that book 3 stars. Then I read Sing It Like Celia, and it's about a girl named Celia who sadly her mother passed away, and her father move to this campsite, and it goes from there, and I gave it 4 stars. Then I read The Love Lyric by Christina Forrest, and I gave this book 5 stars. Then I read Book Lovers by Emily Henry, and I gave it 3 stars. Then I read The Bodyguard by Catherine Centrer, and I gave that book 3 stars. Then I read this book called What Is This Feeling, and I gave that book 4 stars. Then I read The Boys I Loved Before series.
Speech on. Swipe up to on. Swipe up. Pause. Done. Pause. Button.
Continuing on, after the Boys I Loved Before series, I ended up reading I read If You Change Your Mind. It was really good. I gave it 4 stars. Then I read Love on Paper, and I gave it 4 stars. Then I read The Summer I Found You, and it's about this girl who gets diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and she gets broken up with her boyfriend, and she falls in love with another disabled character who uses a wheelchair. Then I read A Little Something Different. I gave that book 4 stars. Then I read Whatever Life Throws at You. I gave that book 4 stars. Then I read The Heartbreak Hotel. I gave that book 4 stars. Then I read If You Give a CEO a Chance, and I gave that book 4 stars. Then I read Fan Art, and it's about 2 boys who fall in love with each other, and I gave it 5 stars. Then I read Stealing for Keeps, and it's about a hockey player who falls in love with a Figure Skater, I think, if I remember correctly. I really, really liked it. Then I read Playing for Flirty, and it's about these two video game players who both play board games, and they fall in love, and I gave it 5 stars. Then I read I Talk Like a River, and one of the characters is autistic. Then I read The Romance Recipe, and it's about a chef who falls in love with a sous chef, and I gave that book 4 stars. Then I read I Am Not Jessica Chen, and it's about a girl who her and her twin, they switch places, and they gave it 5 stars. Then I read Save Your Breath, which is the fourth book in the King of Ice series. Then I read It's a Love/Skate Relationship, and it's about a hockey player who falls in love with a figure skater, and she gets expelled because of a fight that she started after a hockey game, and she has to go to a different school for 6 months, and she learns how to figure skate, and I give it 5 stars. I really loved it. Then I read Every Borrowed Beat, and it's about these two characters who both have chronic illnesses. One of them gets accepted to get a heart transplant, and the other one doesn't, and it goes from there. It was very, very close to home because my dad is in the process of getting the process started to get a possible heart transplant, and it was very, very close to home. It was very, very emotional, but very, very good. I gave this book 5 stars. Then I read On Thin Ice, and it's about these two characters who are twins, and they both have to figure skate together because the main character's friend ends up injuring themselves, and so her brother has to step in, and I gave that book 5 stars. Then I read Go Luck Yourself, which is the second book to the first one, which is The Nightmare Before Christmas, and I gave that book 5 stars. I really loved it. Then I read Make a Move Sunny Park, and I gave that book 4 stars. Then I read The Last Guy on Earth, which is the third book in a hockey series, and I gave that book 4 stars. Then I read Plus One. I gave that book 3 stars. And then I read One for All, and I gave that book 4 stars. And one of the characters had POTS, and it was really, really good. And I'm currently in the middle of another book, which is called
Done. Swipe up. Rewind. Play. Button. Fast transcription. Pause. Done. Dimmed. Done. Pause. Button.
The book I'm currently reading is called Pole Position, and I have a possibility that it's going to be 4 or 5 stars, and might as well include it now since I'm filming my recent reads video early. And I have read 90 books in the month of March, 90, and 33 of them were 5 stars. So